wanted to share a story with you in relation to motherhood and work. When I was about 26, I was working for a judge in the Supreme Court, and they had a little talk on women and the law, how you can have it all. So I excitedly and naively ran upstairs and thought, oh great, fantastic, because I knew I wanted to be a mum so much, but I also wanted to be a career woman. So I thought, this is fantastic, I can have it all. I went up there and heard a lot of stories from these very successful women and how they have had it all. And I think, to me, it depends on how we're defining having it all. For some women, it's they're quite happy to have children and then go back to work full time, or almost full time, or they need to go back full time, and that's one part of motherhood is trying to then negotiate between a full-time career and being a mum. The other side are people who decide that after having children that they don't want to go back to that career, and they actually change careers and either don't work or don't work at all. So they change careers into something that's going to be more family friendly, and they work only a little bit, or a flexible business, or they go and don't work at all. Some people would prefer or are fortunate enough to not need to work during motherhood, and so we all fit into this spectrum somewhere. I've personally found that when I was 26 years old, thought that I definitely wanted to go straight back into the workforce after having kids. I wanted a house husband, and I was very, very keen to get back into the workforce. By the time I actually started having kids in my 30s, it's a very different story. I actually wanted the complete opposite, and I wanted to be around my children as much as possible. And so that's what I've set about doing now, is to create a business that really works in with our family, and gives me as much stay-at-home mother abilities as possible. So I try now to work mainly when my daughters are sleeping, so a lot of night work, daytime work when they both sleep at the same time, which is, as you know, being a mum is a fantasy of ours, that we're going to have two sleeping at the same time. It sometimes happens, as one mum said to me, maybe 1 in 7 days we're lucky, and maybe for an overlap of half an hour or an hour, and we can relax and breathe, and we're actually awake. We're not like half asleep at night, which I find myself half asleep trying to work sometimes. But these are great options for mums these days, where now we have a social media which allows us to have online business, or more hands-off businesses, and that's a very, very fortunate thing, I think, for women in this day and age that we're currently living in, that there is a lot more flexibility around how we make money. So we can, in effect, have it all, but just maybe not in the way that we might have thought. So, for example, I was thinking I could have, at that time I had stars in my eyes, thought I could become a judge or barrister or something like that and be a stay-at-home mum, but the reality soon sunk in after that meeting. Now I realise, I don't even actually want to do a full-time job away from the home at all, so now I'm actually able to have more flexibility, still do something I'm passionate about, but in my own hours, in my own time. It's not as easy as it sounds, of course, because kids need a lot of love and attention, and work does steal us away from that, and particularly in the at some stages you need to put in more than others. Anyway, those are my thoughts on work. It's such a important and necessary part of our lives, and yet it really is in huge contrast and huge competition with our family commitments often for women, and it's can be a very stressful juggle between the two. I'm keen to hear how you're going with it all, so let me know in the comments.